Cream whippers are these nifty little siphons that you'll probably have seen chefs using a lot because they're one of the most versatile and useful small pieces of equipment to have on hand in the kitchen. Basically, these are canisters that you can pressurize with gas that give you very easy ways that you can aerate ingredients and keep them pressurized until you need them. And beyond that, we can use them to make foams and mousses, to carbonate things, to make super light tempura batter, to rapidly infuse liquids, and even to make virtually instant cakes. So today I'm going to give you a quick rundown of 5 handy techniques that you can use these whippers for, some things that you might want to try, and some ways they can make your life and workflow a little bit easier in the kitchen too. Then at the end of the video, I'll give you my recommendations of what to look for if you're looking to pick one of these up. I actually have 5 of these currently in use. Even though I work on my own in the kitchen and I'm only cooking for 8 guests a night, I find them so useful that they're now pretty indispensable to me. And because they're small and robust, I've also travelled with these quite a lot too. Let's start off with using the whippers for foams and mousses. The simplest version of this would be making whipped cream, where you're just adding cream into the canister and charging it with nitrous oxide. That's been very popular with cafes and restaurants for a long time because it makes whipped cream easy to produce, store and dispense in a way that's clean and convenient. This works because nitrous oxide is very soluble, particularly in fat, so when the siphon is charged with the gas, that dissolves into the cream whilst it's under pressure. Then when we pull the trigger to dispense the cream, the nitrous oxide expands as a gas, forming the bubbles that foam and whip the cream. The nitrous oxide also acts as a propellant to dispense your cream or mousse from the whipper. So that's the basic principle, but really that's only just scratching the surface. You can make this huge range of different savoury or sweet mousses working with all sorts of different ingredients. One of the easiest ways to make a flavoured mousse in the whipper is to set your base using agar and then blend that gel into a smooth silky puree that can then be aerated in the whipper. You can use that principle to make all sorts of different flavoured mousses. For example, a little while ago I made a video about how to make a vegan dark chocolate mousse using this method. And that video had a much bigger impact than I expected actually, especially here in Manchester where on some of the streets around us you can see piles of these canisters from where kids have been making mousse after mousse after mousse. I also made a video where I showed you how to make a frozen coconut mousse, which follows the same principle, but then I freeze the mousse with liquid nitrogen so I can break it into small angular pieces. And that's been interesting because it gives you this silky, soft texture when it's thawed, even though it still looks like it's angular and granular. I actually don't serve this on my menu because it doesn't quite fit with the rest of my style, but I still think it's an interesting example to share. Those examples are both sweet mousses, but it also works great for savoury too. And the whipper can also be really useful for hot mousses or things that need to be kept at a specific temperature. You can keep a mousse hot in the whipper by placing it in a pan of water or a water bath, and for example I have a truffle potato mousse on my menu that I hold at 85 degrees ready for me to use in the water bath. That's one of the recipes in my cookbook by the way, that'll also be linked below if you want to check it out. And again you could use this idea to put different sauces into the whippers and have them held at specific temperatures, and that can be especially useful if it's a sauce that might otherwise split. It's one less thing that I need to keep a close eye on, so my attention can be on other things, and it's a nice, neat, reliable setup. And that's pretty applicable across all of these techniques. The whippers can be really useful for your mise en place, and once your product is ready, it can be in the whipper, either kept cold or hot, just ready for you to use. So another way you can use the whipper is with CO2 instead of nitrous oxide, and then you can use them to carbonate things. This is something I don't do as often now because I've got a CO2 tank and carbonation rig here, and that works out a lot cheaper for doing larger batches. But if you just want to play about with carbonation or make something fizzy in a pinch, it's a really handy way to do this. Generally the best way to do this is to charge it with one CO2 charger and then vent out that gas so you get any of the air out of the system, and then you can charge it again with either 1 or 2 CO2 chargers to make it fizzy. The whippers are certainly not perfect for this, because then to get your carbonated liquid out you have to vent the gas and unscrew the top so you can pour it out without it all foaming up. But for something quick and easy with a low setup cost and knowing you've just got this on hand if you want it, it's just good to know that you can do this. I've actually taken concentrated tonic syrup camping before, so I could dilute and carbonate it and make gin and tonics without carrying too much extra weight. And drinks aren't the only thing you can carbonate, so next up we'll look at the benefits of carbonating batters. This is something I do use a lot and I've made a full video about. Basically, this is the same idea as adding fizzy water or beer to a batter, except here you're pushing that idea even further and carbonating the whole batter. And that gives you a great, really light carbonated batter on demand, and one that also stays carbonated as you use it. It's convenient because you can just dispense what you need when you need it, and then the rest of the time keep the batter in the fridge, which helps keep things neat and reduce waste. I use this for the charcoal battered rose koji halloumi that I have on my menu, but I've used this for all sorts of different tempura. The effect works really well, but it's also those benefits to your workflow that I find really useful. And that's great anytime that you're cooking for people and you might want to prepare as much as you can in advance, whether that's at home or in a restaurant. Following on from aerating a batter, we can use a similar sort of idea for aerating a cake batter to make these little microwave cakes that cook in less than a minute. This is a technique that was developed at El Bulli during their time at the cutting edge of creative cuisine. Here, rather than have a cake be aerated by a chemical reaction, for example bicarb producing carbon dioxide, we're going to force gas into the batter under pressure. Using a whipper to aerate the batter is more dramatic but less stable than traditional recipes, so then you need a way to rapidly cook the cake before it collapses. And at El Bulli they discovered you could do this by dispensing the batter into a paper cup and then cooking that in the microwave. And that was fast enough to cook these really light cakes before the foam collapsed. Recipes for cake batters to cook this way are formulated slightly differently to traditional cake recipes, so I'll give you my recipe for a light ginger cake down in the description, but you can also look up any of El Bulli's microwave cake recipes. It's just a case of making your cake batter and then placing that into the whipper, and then I charge this with 2 nitrous oxide canisters. Then I'll dispense some of that cake batter into a paper cup about 1/3 full, and then I microwave that on full power for 35 to 45 seconds. You might need to adapt your timing a little bit depending on the microwave, but that's the basic idea. We'll flip this over and let the cake cool for a minute before releasing it from the cup, and then you've got this really light sponge cake. These do dry out a little bit more quickly than normal cakes, but because they're so quick and easy to make, I would suggest making these just before you need them anyway. Now, I wouldn't serve this on its own, and I haven't actually made these in a little while either, but if you're looking for a little light extra element for a dish, this could be an interesting thing to play with, and again, you can make a ton of different flavours of these, both savoury and sweet. Then, something else you might want to play around with if you haven't tried it is rapid infusion. Dave Arnold developed this technique to use whippers to do rapid infusions into alcohol or oil. Again, it's something I find I don't do very often now because I have some fancy low temperature distilling equipment and ultrasonic baths for rapid infusion, but it's really handy to know that you can do this quickly and easily if you want to. So for this technique, you put your liquid and your flavourful ingredient into a whipper and then it's closed and charged with nitrous oxide. I'm going to give you an example with lemon verbena gin. So last year I made a video about how I make a really simple but delicious lemon verbena gin that's just cold infused, but that does take 2 days to infuse. So that works great, but let's say that you want or need this faster, then you can use this rapid infusion technique. You put your liquid and flavourful ingredient into the cream whipper and charge it with nitrous oxide, then give the whipper a good shake before letting it sit for about 5 minutes. Then we rapidly vent the gas from the whipper and then just strain out your now infused liquid. And even though this would rarely be the method that I would choose first if I've got time to plan things or work in other ways, it's really useful to know how to do this and it's pretty fun just to play about with. Now, if you're looking to pick up a whipper, I would recommend the ISI brand. I haven't got any relationship with them, but it's their whippers that I use in the kitchen now, having tried using some of the cheaper ones as well, and even though they're more expensive, they are just bomb-proof. They've been so reliable, they're absolute workhorses, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend them. Personally, I prefer the half-litre size because that's what works well for my batch sizes and the sort of storage that I have. And I've never felt the need for the insulated thermo whip versions. I think if you want to keep something hot or cold using these, you can just so easily do it by putting them into a water bath or keeping them in the fridge. That's always been absolutely fine for me. You are working with compressed gas, so do make sure that you or anyone else knows what they're doing if they're going to work with these, and make sure that you never open one whilst it's still pressurised. If you're into cooking or work in restaurants, I just don't think you'll ever regret having one of these on hand, and it's something that's basically always in my travel kit if I'm going to go and cook or do a demo somewhere. So thanks for watching, I hope that's been interesting and useful, and I'll see you again soon.